Don't underestimate me just because I'm sick. I won't be dealing with you anymore." Just before Jessica slammed the hospital room door, she turned to us with a smug expression. My husband John and I were left speechless, standing in the hallway of the hospital, frozen. Slowly, I took a deep breath, and then I asked her one more time, "Are you sure about this, Jessica? We won't be there to help you anymore." "Help? From you country folks? Please, I don't need anything from you. Go back to your farm, you poor people." With that, Jessica slammed the door shut. John and I exchanged a look and silently walked away from the hospital. My name is Karen Thompson, and I'm 55 years old. I live in a rural town where my husband John and I run a farm together. I was born into a suburban family near the city, but when I married John, I moved to the countryside to be with him. At first, adjusting to this life was difficult, but with the help of John and my in-laws, I slowly came to love our community and way of life. John's parents have passed on, but they left us with their land and valuable farming knowledge, which have become our most treasured assets. Our farm sits in the middle of a vast, picturesque landscape. Every season brings a new beauty to the scenery, and we primarily grow rice and vegetables here. Our daily routine begins before dawn when we head out to tend the fields. John is especially passionate about growing tomatoes. His tomatoes have become so popular at the local market that people from other states come just to buy them. He watches over them like his own children, carefully nurturing each plant with attention and care. Watching him work makes me admire his dedication to farming even more. Farming isn't easy, but I can say with confidence that living in harmony with nature brings a deep sense of fulfillment. Every harvest feels like a reward for our hard work, and I can't help but smile when I see our fresh produce on the table. John feels the same. On the day of our first harvest each year, he buys a bottle of wine to celebrate, something we usually save for special occasions. We have 2 sons. Our eldest, Robert, lives in New York City with his wife, Jessica, and their daughter, Emily. Jessica hates the countryside, so they rarely visit us. I wish we could see Emily more often, but Jessica is always against the idea of coming here. Robert once suggested bringing Emily to visit without Jessica, but I felt too bad separating such a young child from her mother, so I declined. As a result, their visits are few and far between. However, Robert keeps us updated through phone calls and emails. We love receiving photos and videos of Emily, and video calls have become a small joy in our lives. Our younger son, Michael, is studying agriculture at college. Unlike Robert, Michael comes home regularly and fills up on our farm's homegrown rice and vegetables. Since he lives alone, he often says he misses our home-cooked meals. He always shows gratitude, and it's a big help when he lends a hand on the farm. Michael has told us he wants to join us on the farm after he graduates. Not only is he passionate about farming, but he also has many new ideas to improve our farm. We've always told our sons to pursue their own paths in life, so hearing this from Michael fills us with pride and happiness. As long as nothing changes, we plan to welcome him to the farm after he graduates. Even though John and I are content with our lives and the family we've raised, there's still one issue that weighs on us: Jessica. Family time is very important to us, and we cherish every moment we get to spend together. However, Jessica's aversion to the countryside has prevented us from having more family gatherings. Jessica became part of our family 5 years ago when she married Robert. From the moment we met her, she made her dislike of the countryside very clear. Our farm is about 30 minutes by car from the nearest supermarket, and Jessica complained about the distance from the moment she arrived. John offered to pick them up from the station, but Jessica refused, so they took a taxi. As they walked up the gravel path to our house, we overheard Jessica complaining to Robert. "This place is so inconvenient. There's nothing around here." "Dad offered to pick us up, but you insisted on taking the taxi." "I didn't want to be alone with him in the car. That would be so awkward. And why is this path made of gravel? Can't people pave it?" Jessica huffed and puffed as she struggled to walk in her high heels. "You're the one who decided to wear heels. I told you to dress comfortably." "It's a wedding visit, Robert. I can't just show up in casual clothes. Why couldn't your parents have come to New York instead?" "I've told you 100 times. They're farmers. They can't leave the farm so easily. They came to New York for the wedding. That's more than enough." I know. It's just so hot. Stop making me angry. John and I exchanged uneasy smiles as we listened to their tense conversation. Jessica kept her cool in front of us, but it was obvious she wanted to leave as soon as possible. She didn't touch the tea and snacks I'd prepared, and instead scanned our house as if judging it. When I offered to let them stay the night, Jessica flat out refused. No matter how much we insisted, she was determined to return to New York that very day. In the end, John had to drive them back to the station. With all the complaints Jessica made about transportation, we couldn't just send them back in a taxi. I even tried to give Jessica some money for the taxi ride back. Oh, thank you so much, Karen. I feel bad about taking this. Don't worry about it. We'll be meeting your parents soon in New York, so I'm sure we'll be fine. Yes, just make sure you don't get lost in the city. As she took the money, Jessica finally smiled for the first time, but her words stung. I probably won't be coming back here anytime soon, though. Jessica's attitude shocked me. Even if you don't want to come back, it's polite to at least pretend. I believe in the importance of maintaining relationships, even with some courtesy. This was a red flag for me. John returned from dropping them off, looking just as confused by Jessica's behavior as I was. Apparently, Jessica had insisted on stopping at a local shop for snacks and drinks, causing them to miss their train. The station didn't have an air-conditioned waiting room, so they spent an hour sitting in John's car, where Jessica continued to complain. Robert tried to calm her down, but Jessica wouldn't stop. It eventually escalated into an argument, and John had to intervene. When John got home, he looked absolutely exhausted. That was our first impression of Jessica, a difficult woman who didn't belong. If it weren't for our younger son Michael, keeping things lighthearted, that first meeting might have been a complete disaster. 5 years have passed since that difficult introduction. Despite some clashes, Robert and Jessica had a successful wedding, and shortly after they were blessed with a daughter, Emily. Emily is now 4 years old and loves to chat with us through video calls, telling us all about her time at preschool. The more we talk, the more I wish I could see her in person. One evening, as we were having dinner, I sighed and wondered aloud, do you think they'll refuse to come again this year? Probably, but we can't blame them. Traveling with a young child is tough. John immediately understood what I was thinking without me saying much. He tried to comfort me, but I knew in my heart it wasn't just the traveling. It was Jessica's reluctance. You're right, I'll suggest it, but if they don't want to, we'll just enjoy the holidays with Michael. I'll be happy if at least one of our sons can make it home. This has become a recurring conversation for us whenever holidays or family gatherings approach. Our main concern is whether Robert's family will join us or not. Every year we ask them to come, but the answer is usually the same. Robert is too busy, or they're visiting Jessica's parents instead. But we know the real reason. Jessica simply refuses to come. Still, we try, even if we don't expect much. This year, to our surprise, Robert said yes. And not only that, they plan to stay with us overnight. Apparently, Emily had begged to stay at Grandma and Grandpa's house, and Jessica reluctantly agreed. It had been years since they last visited, not since Emily was a baby. Naturally, Emily had no memory of the countryside, so she was excited about the trip. Jessica, however, looked visibly displeased the moment they arrived. There's nothing here. No stores, no vending machines. What a nightmare. Yes, it's a bit quiet, but we do have fresh air and plenty of nature to enjoy. Nature means bugs. If Emily gets stung by a bee, I'll never forgive you. The bees aren't active this time of year, so you don't have to worry. Yeah, and cities have bees too, you know. Jessica was clearly annoyed by Michael's comment and shot him a glare. She spent the rest of the day complaining about the countryside. When night fell, she complained about how dark it was, how slow the internet was, and how she couldn't understand how anyone could live like this. I kept taking deep breaths to stay calm and let her words pass without reaction. John stayed silent, but I could see the frustration building in him too. At dinner time, we set out a spread of fresh vegetables from the farm, and Emily's eyes lit up as she asked, Did you and Grandpa grow these, Grandma? Yes, we picked them this morning. Even in the winter? Yes, there are some vegetables you can grow even in the winter. Emily was fascinated and happily ate her vegetables, smiling as she enjoyed each bite. Seeing this, Jessica's expression darkened even more. There's better food in the city. Michael tried to diffuse the tension with some lighthearted comments, but Jessica remained as stubborn as ever. Still, isn't it nice to have the whole family together around the table? Yeah, but I prefer to be eating somewhere more comfortable. This place feels damp, and the food smells like the countryside. But Grandma's vegetables are really yummy. Emily laughed, but Jessica sighed and shook her head. We could have been at a nice restaurant in New York if you hadn't insisted on coming here. But I wanted to see Grandma and Grandpa. At this point, Jessica began taking her frustration out on her own daughter, and John finally spoke up. Jessica, this is our home. You could show a little respect. And don't take it out on Emily. I know that, but I hate coming here. Every time I do, I get more and more stressed. The room fell silent, and I tried to lighten the mood by turning to Emily with a smile. Emily, how about tomorrow you help us pick some vegetables from the garden? Yeah, I want to do it. Emily enthusiastically nodded, but Jessica sighed and muttered under her breath. I just want to go home. A few months after that tense visit, we received some shocking news. Jessica had fallen seriously ill and needed a kidney transplant. We were floored by the news, and I immediately called Robert. He hadn't known either and was clearly shaken. He took time off work to care for Emily and look after Jessica. Of course, we were all deeply concerned about Jessica's health. I also felt guilty. I wondered if pushing her to visit the countryside had made her condition worse. Did the long trip back and forth put too much strain on her? These thoughts kept me up at night. I wanted to help in any way I could, but I didn't reach out directly, thinking it might stress her out. Instead, I asked Robert what she needed and did my best to fulfill her request from a distance. Eventually, Jessica was admitted to the hospital. We made arrangements with Robert to visit her after getting permission. But when we arrived with flowers in hand, what we experienced was beyond anything we could have imagined. I knocked on the door of the hospital room Robert had told us about, and Jessica answered brightly. Come in. But the moment she saw our faces, her expression darkened. Oh, it's you. What are you doing here? I'm about to have surgery. I don't need visitors. Sorry, Jessica. We just wanted to see you before your surgery. We'll leave after we give you these flowers. I held out the bouquet I'd bought near the hospital, trying to stay calm despite her sudden hostility. But Jessica swatted the flowers away, glaring at us. Get those out of here. They're disgusting. Don't bring that countryside junk near me. Oh, you don't like flowers. I got them in New York, you know. I thought they'd be nice. If you were going to bring something, you should have brought sweets instead. And who brings flowers to the hospital anyway? What if the pollen makes me worse? Can you take responsibility if that happens? I felt a mixture of sadness and frustration as I listened to her angry outburst. Still, I reminded myself she was probably on edge before her surgery. I softened my tone and tried to explain. I didn't bring food because I heard you had to fast before the surgery, and the florist said these flowers have very little pollen. But if you'd rather not have them, we'll take them back. Then why don't you just leave already? You're so clueless. John and I started to leave, but I couldn't ignore the way Jessica had mentioned Robert, so I turned back. Jessica, is something going on between you and Robert? If there's anything you can't say to him, you can talk to me. That's exactly what I hate about you guys. Why do you always have to get involved? When I got sick, Robert started acting all helpful, taking time off work to take care of Emily, and sending me all these gifts like I'm supposed to be grateful. You think I should be thankful for this pathetic flower bouquet too? Her words were beyond hurtful. John and I exchanged a glance, shocked by how cruel she was being. I was angry, but I tried to keep my composure as I responded. We didn't do any of this expecting thanks. Robert isn't helping you because he wants praise either. We all just want you to get better. Karen's right. We know you're going through a lot, but being nasty to people trying to help won't make things any easier for anyone. We don't care about ourselves, but you should at least think of Robert and Emily. Jessica was silent for a moment, and then she pressed the nurse call button. There are these people here who won't leave. Can someone help me? Jessica shot us a smirk as she summoned the nurse to kick us out. Get out, you poor farmers. If you come back again, I'll call the police. John and I were stunned by her words, but we had no choice but to leave. When the nurse arrived, we were escorted out of the room. Don't underestimate me just because I'm sick. I won't be dealing with you anymore. Just before Jessica slammed the hospital room door, she turned to us with a smug expression. John and I exchanged a look and silently walked away from the hospital. A few days later, we went back to our usual lives on the farm. I got an unexpected call from Jessica. Her voice was different, nervous and hesitant. Karen, can I talk to you for a second? What is it? We're in the middle of harvest, and you said you didn't want anything to do with us anymore. About that, I wasn't myself. I was just so stressed being in the hospital. I didn't mean the things I said. So what do you want? If this isn't important, I'm going to hang up. Jessica scrambled to stop me as I pretended to hang up the phone. Wait, please, don't hang up. Fine, but be quick. I got discharged from the hospital yesterday. Well, congratulations. No, it's not like that. I was discharged because I couldn't pay the deposit for the surgery, so they canceled it. Robert told me that you and John were supposed to pay for the transplant. Is that true? Jessica's voice was shaking now, filled with uncertainty. What she was saying was true. The transplant surgery Jessica needed was expensive, and Robert's salary alone couldn't cover it with their mortgage and Emily's future education. So John and I had planned to pay for the surgery. The day we visited her in the hospital was supposed to be when we made the payment arrangements. But of course, Jessica didn't know that and had us thrown out before we could do anything. We left without paying, and after explaining everything to Robert, he apologized profusely and told us not to worry about it. A few days later, Jessica was forced to leave the hospital because of the missed payment. After learning the truth from Robert, she must have realized her mistake and decided to call me. It was obvious that Jessica was trying to manipulate us into paying for the surgery now, but I decided to play along. Yes, it's true. We were going to cover the $80,000 cost for the surgery. But we didn't want you to feel pressured, so we didn't say anything. So why didn't you pay the deposit? You not paying is why I couldn't have my surgery. Do you understand how serious this is? Jessica's polite tone quickly evaporated, and she started to yell, clearly forgetting about all the nasty things she'd said before. I decided it was time to stop playing games. Why should we pay for surgery for someone who isn't even family anymore? It's none of our business what happens to you now. What? Jessica was stunned into silence. What's so surprising? You're not part of this family anymore. Divorce means we have no obligation to you. Divorce? What are you talking about? Haven't you received the papers yet? Robert said he sent the divorce papers, but maybe you've been too busy spending time with your affair partner to check your mail. What are you talking about? Are you crazy? You can call me crazy all you want, but I know everything. Robert knows too. We have all the evidence, Jessica. Jessica muttered something under her breath, but didn't respond after that. When she didn't say anything for a while, I hung up the phone. Jessica called back several times, but I turned off my phone and went back to work. I left the rest to Robert and his lawyer. The truth was, Jessica had been cheating on Robert for years. After realizing that was happening, Robert began preparing for a divorce. But then Jessica got sick, and he decided to wait until after her surgery to move forward. Unfortunately, Jessica's behavior only worsened as she got sicker, and she treated Robert like a servant while using Emily as a punching bag for her frustration. Eventually, Emily became afraid of her mother and refused to leave Robert's side. Concerned for their safety, Robert confided everything to us, including Jessica's infidelity and his plans for divorce. Once Jessica was discharged from the hospital, she went to stay with her parents, which was both for her health and for Emily's well-being. While she was away, Robert finalized his divorce preparations and served Jessica with the papers, demanding compensation for her affair. Jessica was furious when she learned about the divorce, but there was no turning back now. Unable to afford the surgery, Jessica had nowhere to turn, and to our surprise, she actually showed up at our farm begging for help. Please, Karen, John, help me. I'm sorry for everything. We're not your family anymore, Jessica. There's no reason for us to help you. I'll apologize for everything. Please just help me pay for the surgery. You were going to pay for it anyway before the divorce, right? I'm still Emily's mother. You wouldn't take away a child's mother, would you? Emily is scared of you, Jessica. She doesn't want to see you, and frankly, I don't blame her. Whatever you did, it was enough to make her fear you. I didn't do anything wrong. You can think that all you want, but we can't trust you with Emily. Besides, how are you going to raise a child with no job and no health? You should focus on getting better instead of trying to use Emily as a bargaining chip. Fine. How about this? I'll give you custody of Emily. In exchange, you pay for my surgery. That's fair, right? Are you serious right now? You want to sell your own child for a surgery? Get out of here, Jessica, and don't ever come back. I chased Jessica off our property, telling her not to come back as she fled down the dirt road. After the divorce, Robert was awarded full custody of Emily, and Jessica's surgery was indefinitely postponed. Jessica's parents couldn't afford the surgery either, and she had to rely on distant relatives for help. But with the infidelity scandal hanging over her, finding financial support was difficult. For now, it seems like Jessica's surgery is a long way off. As for Robert and Emily, they moved in with us after everything settled down. Robert quit his job and found a remote position that allowed him to work from home, giving him more time to spend with Emily. We're so happy to have them living with us, and Emily seems to be thriving in this environment. Next year, when Michael graduates, we'll have a house full of family again. We better start clearing up Michael's old room soon. You're right. It's going to be busier than ever from here on out. John and I smiled at each other, imagining our lively growing family in the years to come.